I have chosen to examine the pedagogical approach known as project-based learning. Project-based learning is a teaching method where students learn through inquiry around a chosen area. Project-based learning revolves around learning focused on a key question or problem. PBL emphasises learning in depth as opposed to breadth of inquiry coverage and is based on study around real-world concepts. In this way, PBL is specific and different to the traditional topic or unit-based learning found in many schools, easily identified in such early primary elementary topics as my family or my school. Project-based learning looks similar at first, but would involve a key question about families that is answered through the project, such as, what does family mean to different people? PBL goes on to differ from topic-based learning in many ways and has been shown to be a far more effective learning method than the traditional instructional methods often found in classes today. Project-based learning is therefore a key pedagogical method for effectively teaching and learning of the topics you want your students to know about in depth. PBL can be seen as synonymous with problem-based learning. Problem-based learning is similar in that it is an inquiry around a key question, but that key question is always a real-world problem that needs solving. Project-based learning isn't quite as restrictive, as the question can be an area of interest or just a want to know. The two methods are very much complementary, and a teacher well-versed in project-based learning would almost certainly use problem-based learning. For ease of understanding and simplicity, I will refer to project-based learning, but please do understand that this also includes problem-based learning. So, why it matters to me. As an elementary school teacher, I feel that a lot of my curriculum is likely to be presented in a topic-based format, and I want to move that onto a project-based format as much as possible. I've already seen topics that have been, in my opinion, poorly implemented and would have been much more fulfilling and useful in terms of student learning had they been implemented using a project-based learning approach. One example I have in mind is the topic of churches that I supported a kindergarten class with last year. As a class, we went on a field trip to our local church. The field trip was introduced with a general class conversation about churches. The teacher linked us to Bible stories that we'd been reading together as part of a wider work on world religions. The children were very excited about the visit to the church. The church was an extremely interesting place, complete with very moving monuments to the fallen during the Great War and World War II, fonts, stained glass windows, and even a labyrinth for reflection. We had a very knowledgeable and kindly guide, and the children really loved the trip, as did I. On our return to class, we did two follow-up activities. One was to create a photo collage of their visits on an iPad. The second was a cut and paste activity where the children had to match photographs or items commonly found within a church and with their written common noun, i.e. pulpit and its photograph. Had this topic been presented as a project, I think the children could have achieved a far greater depth of learning and understanding. I shall therefore present my findings around my research into the best way to implement project-based learning so far through this imaginary improved church project for kindergarten students. The Buck Institute for Education, or BIE, a leader in promoting PBL and PBL research, states that there are 8 elements to successfully using project-based learning in schools. Firstly, the project should focus around a challenging problem or question. So for our church project, that question would be, why do we have churches and what makes a building a church? Secondly, according to the BIE, the project needs to have sustained inquiry. Children should be given time to examine and explore the project over an extended period of time. So for our project, we're going to do this project over 5 weeks with the following suggested activities. In the first week, we're going to have a class discussion about churches to find out what the children want to know and what they know already. We're also going to have an online search in groups of 3 where the children are going to be supported to find and print up pictures of neighbour churches. All of this information, including our class discussion findings and the pictures, are going to be printed up and put on display in our classroom. In week 2, children are going to be taken to the library, working in their groups of 3 to pull out and look up books on churches, bringing those books back to class where they're going to be regularly available for access and reference. Children are going to be asked to find out one new fact about churches as a homework task, and then we're going to have another class discussion to feedback all the information that we found out and to see what other questions we have. During week 3, we're actually going to go to the church armed with a list of questions that we've been working on carefully. Children are going to have drawing paper and pencils for sketches and note-taking, and 3 children are going to be nominated as photographers, along with some adult volunteers as backup. Back in school, a further class discussion to talk through what we now know following our visit, We're going to put all of those pictures up on display, and the children are going to have time to make a full painting or drawing from their sketches. Again, these are going to all be put on display. Children are then going to be given time to write about their experience of visiting the local church, and these writings will be added to this display. In week 4, the local minister will come to visit the children and view their display and to talk to the children about what they've learned and to answer any questions that they have. On week 5, we'll have our final class discussion, where the teacher will facilitate the children's reflections about what they knew at the beginning, what they've learned, and anything they might do differently next time. Children are given time to write in their journal a piece about their experience and thoughts on taking part in the church's project. As you can see, this is quite different from the original lessons. Back to the BIE and their gold standards for PBL. They state that thirdly, the project must have authenticity and a real-world basis. Tick for our church's project. We're looking at buildings within the children's local community, which they've likely seen multiple times from the outside and maybe from the inside. And now they're going to be able to look and say, why do they look as they do? What happens inside them? What are all the different items in the church, etc., etc. All of these questions could be looked at and learned about through this project. Fourthly, the project must have the opportunity to contain student voice and choice, according to the BIE. Well, for our church's project, this is going to be achieved through our class discussions, where the questions for the project are going to be directly posed by the children. The teacher will act as guide, facilitator, and mentor. Fifthly, the project must have an end product that is made public. This provides motivation for students to do their best work, as they know it's not simply going to get filed away. Within our church's project, we have the minister coming in to view the wall display of our work and to talk to the children. This could equally be the parents, church members, or even the school principal. It could have also been a presentation or an online website. Physical people didn't need to come into the classroom as long as the information was public. Sixthly, the project must have time for reflection built in. For our church's project, this is going to be through our continual class discussion reflections and also through our reflections in our journal entry. Seventhly, the project must have time to critique and revise learning and questions. Again, for these young children, that will be done through class discussions. But for older children, this might involve reading their own and others' work and providing feedback and thoughts on what might be changed, what works and what doesn't. The final element, and the most important in terms of lifelong skills development, is that the project allows for the development of 21st century skills, what the BIE talks of as success skills. So for our church's project, our kindergarten students have been given the opportunity to develop their research skills in 2 ways, both online and in print, their collaborative skills through small group work and class discussion, their presentation skills through feedback to the class. Their critical thinking skills have been stretched as they've been asked to go from passive observers of their local church to actually thinking in depth about what the building is and what it means to different people and why it is there. I would also like to make it very clear that a project in churches really should be followed up by projects in mosques, temples and other places of worship and spiritual importance. Not necessarily in the same year, of course, where would you find the time, but certainly over the coming semesters and academic years. So, evidence. Where's the evidence for project-based learning? As you can see, there's a lot more work involved than in the original topic work I was involved in an actual school. Why give ourselves that extra work, and how can it actually be achieved in the real world? It sounds good on paper, but is it possible? Well, research shows us that children who learn through project-based learning have better long-term retention of content and understanding of the subjects taught. Students perform better during high-stakes testing. Students have a more positive attitude to their learning. Students have better problem-solving skills. Students have better group work, collaborative skills. This is all based on Strobel and Van Barneveld evidence, but there's a lot more studies out there. So although I have no way of knowing for sure, I could be almost certain that few of those little kindergartners would be able to tell me what a pulpit or a font is now. Not that that gap in knowledge is necessarily going to impact on them for life, but what they have missed out on is the opportunity to develop those critical thinking skills, those questioning and inquiring minds they are going to need to be successful in the 21st century. They have also missed out on developing their group work skills, another very important skill. And I wonder too how many ways they would be able to give in order to find out about a new subject if asked. As an example, following a PBL science project, children in the experimental group, i.e. the PBL group, came up with 10 more methods of inquiry when asked, compared to the control group who didn't receive PBL teaching and could only come up with 7 ideas to investigate something. Is it possible in a real classroom? I would definitely say yes. The outline that I set out earlier of the 5-week project could definitely be done in a real class. Children are carrying out art lessons, they're doing pieces of writing, they're having regular carpet time, they're hopefully going to the library each week, and they're being given laptop time each week. So I think the key here is to link all of these things together so that the art is around the project, time on laptops is spent on the project, and so on. In this way, children are still learning their core writing, reading and computer skills while also developing their understanding and knowledge of the chosen topic. In the middle and high school, the argument becomes different due to the subject specialist structure. A whole school shift to a cross-curricular approach could be achieved with principal direction. However, that's a massive change, and you could easily introduce PBL into your classroom for those areas of the curriculum that you really want your students to know inside out, for example, to pass those high-stake exams. I would encourage all teachers to look into this method further, as you will find the research as compelling as I have.